Yeah, hey Bidii. So today we are on a farmer's farm, and we are right here in good old Shiprock, New Mexico. Well, actually just west of Shiprock. Today we're going to share a really good interview with a couple who decided to make a good cause on a community, utilizing grants and giving back to community, and also helping employ locals. Before I go on and on, let's get directly to the point and interview them.
Yeah, hi, yeah, it's Zachary Ben in Ishia. Yeah, the net and Nashla. I was a touching by Shin, Kilachini dash che, Ashihan dashanella, like what's out the net and Nashla. Welcome to our farm here in Gadii'ahi, New Mexico. I started this farm here with my wife and 2.5-year-old son, and now we have a 3-month-old. So, being able to provide healthy, traditional baby food for our communities here, our communities beyond, and being able to increase that access to foods that is not touched by chemicals, that has that spiritual significance to it, and that is a lot of what we do around here on this farm. We don't use any type of GMOs in our process. We don't use any chemicals. We don't use any chemical fertilizers. So very organic, using those traditional Navajo knowledge to be able of farming, and combine that with modern ways of farming. So you'll be able to hear that story, see that story, and thank you for, taking us along on that journey.
All right, first off, so where are you from originally?
I was born and raised in Shiprock.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so I was born and raised in Shiprock, just right across the river here.
Where I was raised.
Right on, yeah, right on farm roads, first lane.
Yeah,
First
okay,
lane, Bluff
yeah.
Road. That's where I grew up. Playing in those ditches. I'm sure you played in those ditches too. Definitely, that's our playground.
Yeah,
Here in
yeah.
Shiprock, yeah.
Yep.
Running down into the river, floating down sometimes. Yeah, that's exactly where I grew up, and wonderful times. And I think that's the type of foundation that I want to lay for my son and my daughter now, and being able to really understand a lot of navigation of trauma. And so I think that's for me, growing up with that, growing up with the good times, but what do we want our children to inherit? Yeah. And I think that for me was, when we first found out we were pregnant, my wife and I, we thought to ourselves like, what can we do to change our children's environment that they're going to grow up in?
Yeah.
And is it going to look like Shiprock? Is it going to look like another place, another home? And we're farmers, so we thought to ourselves like, why don't we start the farm? Why don't we continue those practices? Because I'm a 6th-generation farmer.
Yeah.
Our children are, like I like to say, is 7th in training.
Yeah, right?
So
7th in the making.
Yes. So we thought to ourselves like, why don't we continue on that path? And here we are about 3 years later now. And this is our 2nd year on this plot here. And so much growth, both within our lives as parents, providers, and as farmers, and being able to really navigate a lot of what transpires in your community, your family. How do you navigate those things, and being able to navigate from surviving every day into thriving.
And so you graduated from high school here too?
I was homeschooled.
Homeschooled?
I was
okay.
homeschooled, but my senior year, what would have been my senior year in a school system would have been, I ran cross country for the Shiprock High School Chieftains.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I ran
Go
cross country with
Chieftains.
them. Yes. So I did that, and loved it.
So what year did you graduate?
It would have been 2016.
2016. Oh,
Yes.
okay. You're young.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's cool. All right. So after high school or after homeschool, first year of Trek. So where did you go after that?
For me, I stayed home and farmed with my family. We were one of the larger producers of Gadii'ahi, which is Navajo dried steamed corn. And with that, I felt like from doing that to also, I'm an artist in sand painting. That's my medium. So I use all natural pigments to create works of art that I felt like that my mission there during that time was to be able to preserve the culture through the storytelling of my art pieces. And so I would do a lot of gallery shows from the East Coast to the West Coast. I have pieces and works across the world, but I felt like that was great. It will continue to be great if I continue down that path. But what really made me pull back on a lot of that was realizing that a lot of those works, a lot of those stories that were being portrayed and expressed were being put in vaults. They were being put behind closed off areas where only VIP members can get into those areas, and it was not being the impact of that work was not happening in my community where I wanted it to be in the first place.
That sounds like the Smithsonian.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Smithsonian, museums across from like Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Phoenix, especially in this local area in the Southwest. Like, again, like I was able to create these wonderful pieces, but they were used to be their intent with those pieces were to preserve them behind closed doors rather than sharing them with the world and my community.
Which is not preserving, it's
Right.
it's isolating.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So, from that path, I felt like, again, there was not a lot of impact with what I was wanting to do with that. But I still sand paint to this day. But I feel like, it's the work that we're doing now with our children here on the farm is way more, way more impactful, way more significance to what we do and how we do these things. And a lot of it surrounds entrepreneurship.
Yep.
Entrepreneurship and establishing Bidii Baby Foods as an LLC. We've established that. So we're one of the first agricultural cooperatives to be established here on the Navajo Nation domestically through the Navajo Nation Business Development Office. And again, that was what we intended to generate generational wealth. Rather than building up individually ourselves, we can chase a profit, we can chase a return of investment, but we're indigenous people. With that in mind, we are environmentally aware. We're cognitive of our economies, and that's something that was severed with first contact 500 years ago. So, what are we doing to move out or move in a new direction from, having that severed with disenfranchisement of, colonialism? So we felt to ourselves like, why don't we, use those same Western methods of doing business, establishing, your EIN, paying your taxes, being able to have that all on record. I think that was something that was important because I wasn't taught that at a younger age.
Yeah, because we don't have that generation of experience to rely on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I would sell these paintings for thousands of dollars, I would come home and it would be gone the next day. Why is that? Is it the inability to save and I wasn't taught that? Was it bills were just piling up for the time that I was painting? And that was something that survival mentality that I did not recognize during those times. And so when we established this business, we thought to ourselves, like, this is something that we want our children to inherit. We want our children to inherit the savings that we're producing now. We want them to inherit the wisdom of taking care of the land so it can take care of you. And being able to inherit those qualities of life rather than the disadvantages of, trauma that I inherited from my family and my parents. And I wanted that cycle to end. because I think in Navajo culture, we're very rich people.
Yep.
We're rich in songs, we're rich in prayer. Those are things that were not severed, the culture.
Yep.
And now we're hitting a wall where a barrier in our culture of like our children are losing that language. They're losing those ways of how to navigate life because the stories are not being talked about anymore. They're not being, when you hear about they used to do a lot of these things. These farms used to be green. The stories, you could go to a hogan and the elders would be talking about them. But now you just hear about a long time ago things.
Yep.
What about today? And I feel like that's where we have that huge disconnect. And that's where, we wanted our children to be connected, to be in sync with what is happening in their natural surroundings, and being able to care for those natural surroundings. And that's where, it's very much, alive and well today through the farmland,
Yep.
through using those natural resources of the land rights and the water rights. We're protecting them now. We're actively using them. So because of that, we're no longer preserving.
Yeah.
And so that's where that switch up of my medium changed. My medium of being able to express my love and passion for my culture is portrayed here on the farm now. Mm-hmm. Just the medium's just changed. It's not sand, but it's still, the earth is my foundation, my canvas. The water is my paintbrush, and the seeds is what is my pigment. And being able to provide that color and that ability to feed off of that artwork and digest that through food. And I think, being able to have those stories alive and well and teach it to our children is what will reconnect them back to that language. Mm-hmm. Because we as human beings, nowadays, we're very ignorant. We think we're superior. We think we're above all else. And, I think with that mentality, it made us ignorant that, when you think back and hear those creation stories once again, in those creation stories, what was here before us? It was the animals, it was the plants, it was the wind, it was the earth and Father Sky. With all of that combined, and you think to yourselves like, oh, we just barely started our path as human beings.
Yep.
So that language belongs to the elements. It belongs to those creatures that were here before us.
Yeah.
And we're ignorant now, thinking that, if we put it in textbooks, if we put it in writing, and if we put it in digital formats, it'll preserve and protect it, and our children will learn it because that's what they know now. Well, yeah, but the language is intended to be taught and learned on this foundation, not the foundation of it. Right, living it.
Yep.
And right now we don't have that chance because everybody is out and about. Everybody's contributing to Americana. Yeah. They're trying to pay their bills. They're trying to find a job, get an education, and with that time that they're out there trying to build their future, they're losing out on the past. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where we are able to then provide that space for them to flourish in, provide that space for them to learn how to synchronize and connect with those natural elements that were here before us, give reverence to that, ritualize that, and then that's when the language will easily come back into their spiritual parts of themselves. Not just the top layer of like, oh, I learned this on Duolingo today.
Yeah, or I saw this YouTube short.
Right.
But they don't put it into practice.
Right.
It's just more of like, hey, guess what I learned? Mm-hmm. All right, on to the next thing. Like you said, Americana, put it into practice.
Right.
And that's the tough part about trying to you want to keep up the Joneses or you're career driven, but your career is not in our own culture. It's not in our people. So you dip, you just go in and out of the locker room.
Yeah,
I guess.
You take a lot of compromise.
Yeah.
And with that compromise and those shortcuts, those are things that will continue to disadvantage you rather than advance you in those areas. And I feel like, we're all guilty of that nowadays. And I feel like, why is that? And I think it's with the rush of, Western industrialization, where a lot of our Che's and our uncles and our dads were all part of the mining history, the extractive industries, the building of railroads, and because my grandpa was that. He was a uranium miner. Yeah. And what he did with that was he would be spend hours at a time. His wife would be home with like 10 kids, and now those kids don't talk to each other today, all of them. And so when you think about that, it's like, why is that? Why are we such in a impoverished mindset in a place and feeling disadvantaged, and it's because, you know, we were taken away like that in that sense. And then you got boarding school era, and I feel like, you know, it really, I think that to sum it all up was that, you know, my grandfather, he would go out into the mines, he'd come back and he brought a stone home and it was yellow. And he put it on the mantle right there on the fireplace. He put it right there and he said, "Kids, come here, look, gather around. That stone is what's putting food in your bellies. That stone is putting clothes on your back, buying your textbooks so you can go to school. It puts fuel in the truck. That's why we have a truck now. It buys the horses, it buys the cows. That stone right there is going to take care of you." And it was uranium, pure uranium. And now, you know, hearing those stories of that and realizing like today, like, you know, we don't have access to uranium anymore in that sense of like, you know, having to go out and mine it like our grandfathers and great-grandfathers did.
And that's only 2 generations ago.
Right,
Yep.
right, exactly. And those are things that I feel like, you know, what can we do to move out of that mindset that we were taught, so we were beat down in those mines to learn to you know, bow down to, you know, those, because we thought of it as, you know, natural elements at that time. You know, we still had that, you know, cognitive way of like, this is the environment providing for us and, you know, provides for our family. And that's what the white supervisors and the white CEOs told them, because they read into the Navajo people really well. They're like, oh, they ritualize the elements. If we can trick them into thinking that the earth is providing to them, we can get that uranium out even without a lot of pushback. And those are things that I feel like people don't think about. People don't think about those things anymore, because what are we doing nowadays? We're so busy surviving. We're trying to get through the week, whether it be, you know, sitting at your 8-to-5 job, you got bills to pay, you got kids to take to school. We're so caught up in that we don't have time to actually like think about where we came from to now where we're heading as a people, as a family, as a community. We've already invested, as Bidii Baby Foods, we already invested in the work of the land. This is a comparison of, you know, what was here before and what is growing here now. Go through the added value process of turning white corn, Navajo Indian white corn, into Navajo dried steam corn, then become farm to school certified through the New Mexico Grown program, which is a farm to school initiative. It's very, very, very similar to like the yin and yang concept, philosophy. And I think that's where, you know, we have that balance here to share, is because we as human beings in the Navajo creation stories, we are made up and derived from our genesis is corn.